All right, so this is the video for Sudoku Hard. So after you've forked and cloned this repository, then you'll open up Sudoku Hard in your editor. And really you're not getting a lot here, and that's why this is called Sudoku Hard. So you're still getting the Sudoku helper file that I've got here, which gives you actually quite a bit. It gives you a lot of functions. It detects the wind for you, it updates the board for you, it parses all the boards from the file. It really does a lot. So I mean, it's not that hard, but it is still pretty hard because you're going to have to use all of these helper functions in such a way that you can play the game. So let me try to help you out and give you some direction just right off the bat. So first thing you'll notice is that this if name equals main is the entry point to our program. When someone says python sudoku hard.py, it's going to go down this file and it's going to see this first, and it's going to call this show menu function. Now that is not the case if I were to just start doing stuff here. But because we're using functions, we are not using, I mean, this is evaluated, but this isn't really doing anything. It's just setting a variable. This is a global variable. So you want to make sure that everything you do in this file is in a function. So make sure you do that. So if you want to quit, make a def quit that does something. So which you're going to want to do. So this show menu function, what it's supposed to do is just show the menu that we've got. And so I'm gonna talk about a few of these things as I go through. Since this is the hard one, I'm gonna just use this the game as my guide. So here we go. So show menu is going to print out this, and then it's going to show this menu over and over and over again. So if I tried to say W, it's going to say I don't recognize that, try again. And then it's going to do the various other things. So you're going to have to implement a quit, a list scores, and a new game. So those, I would suggest that those are all separate functions, and that in show menu you just, if it's an N, do a new game. If it's an L, list scores. If it's a Q, quit. So that's what this show menu function will do. In the list scores function, you're going to have to implement some logic. So let me show you Sudoku scores. So I've got this Sudoku scores file that has the name of the person who played and the outcome, whether it was a win or a loss, a W or an L. And so when you list the scores, you're going to have to read this whole file and then parse out, and I would recommend that you do it in a dictionary. So the name would be the key in the dictionary, and then you'd have a tuple of wins and losses. So you would update the first element in a tuple or a list, however you want to implement it. Lists might be easier. I used a tuple just because I can explain it another day, but so yeah, I would recommend that it's a dictionary and then a list of wins and losses where the first element in the list is a win and the second element is a loss. And every time you encounter a win, you increment the first element in that list. And every time you encounter an L, you increment the second element in that list. So that's a little tricky, and that's probably the one thing I offered the medium difficulty in the Sudoku assignment over hard. So that's going to be something that if you chose hard, then that's the thing that's going to differentiate you. So that's what the list scores is going to have to do. So once you've parsed that file, then you're going to have to show the user who they chose, because when we say list scores, you're going to have to print out, they're going to have to put in someone to see, and it shows their record, wins and losses. If I put in someone that doesn't exist, then it's going to say there are no results for nobody. So anyway, that's what you're going to have to do there. If they say new game, then I would call a new function that creates a new game. So this new game function would then get all of the boards from the Sudoku helper. The Sudoku helper, it gives you boards, and then it would randomly select one of the boards from that list of boards. Does that make sense? So you want to get all of the boards from the Sudoku helper, and then you want to randomly select one. That way, every time they play, they randomly get a new board. Then you want to play the game. And so then I'd have a new function that's play game. And in the play game function, you'll just loop forever. And the play game function will, just like we see in a new game. I mean, first we get the user. So if I put that in there, so it's gonna keep looping over and over and over again, and it's gonna print out the title and it's gonna print out the board. And these are both functions that you get in the Sudoku helper. And then you're gonna prompt for a column and a row and a value, and do that however you want. If you want to have the prompt be that they do call equals a, row equals 4, and then val equals 5, you could do that. I think that's a little harder, which is why I did A4 7. So however you want to do it, you could have it be A4 7. You're the one that's going to parse it, so you get to choose what the prompt is like. So that's totally up to you. So after you've printed out the board and you do the prompt, then you'll have to read what they put. So if once they do A4 and then they do, let's say, a 5, you're going to have to read that, and you're going to update the board, which is a helper function. So Sudoku.update board. And then once you have a new board, which if it was invalid, so I could do A0. Let's see. So if I did A0 and I tried -1, it's going to say, whoa, that doesn't even make sense. So don't do that. So you're going to have to make sure that they entered a valid format and that they're able to successfully update the board. If update board can't do it, it will return none. So you're going to have to handle that. And then finally, the last thing you'll do, and one thing I didn't mention, you'll have to handle Q if they want to quit. So at the same time that you're trying to parse this out, if they put Q, then you'll quit. Or, you get to choose what they're going to type. So maybe they have to press quit, or I give up. You get to choose. But then, the last thing that you'll do is that once you've updated the board, then you'll ask the Sudoku helper to detect if it's a win. So you'll say Sudoku.detect win, and you'll pass in the board, and then it will return true or false based on whether or not it's in a winning configuration. So if I put A0 and 4, I'm not going to get a win, even though that completed this, because earlier I actually changed this to be a 5. So if I do A4, and that should be A3, now it detected a win, and it's going to print out victory, which is provided for you in Sudoku helper, and it's going to print out my wins and losses. And so that's going to be the same thing that you're going to do when they do. It's going to have to do something very similar to when they want to list scores. So like we saw here, when we list scores, you can see this. I mean, this looks the exact same, right? So maybe that should be its own function. And then we can call it when they say list scores, and we can also call it when they win or they lose. So just a suggestion. Then finally, when they quit or when they win, you're going to have to print out the, and when I say print out, I mean write to a file. You're going to have to write the outcome. So I had to create a function that is write outcome, and it takes the name of the person and the outcome, whether it was a win or a loss, and it's going to write it to this Sudoku scores.txt, just like we saw earlier when we opened that file. So that's about it. That sounds like a lot, but I think that it's not too bad. In my code, it's about 100 lines of code. I've given you about 15. So again, yours might be more than 100 or less than 100, but I'm just trying to give you a ballpark estimate of what's ahead of you. So this is not called Sudoku hard for no reason. I think that it is somewhat challenging. So if this is what you want to do, and honestly, this is what I would recommend. I would recommend that you do Sudoku hard, because you're going to learn the most. And you're going to feel a little bit of pain, because it's hard and you're going to get stuck, but I think that by fighting through it, you're going to learn more than if you were to do the easy or the medium. I would try this out, ask me questions before you give up and go to medium or easy. And I really hope this is fun.